Hello friends, welcome back to my channel English Notes. Friends, today's topic of my notes is the Renaissance and the Reformation. The Renaissance and the Reformation. Renaissance rebirth is the name commonly applied to the period of European history following the Middle Ages. It is said to have begun in Italy in the late 14th century and to have continued through the 15th and 16th centuries. In this period, the European arts of painting, sculpture, architecture, and literature reached an immense not exceeded in any age. The development came late to England in the 16th century and did not have its flowering until the Elizabethan and Jacobean periods, sometimes in 212. Fact, John Milton is described as the last great Renaissance poet. Many attempts have been made to define the Renaissance in a brief assertion as though a single essence underlay the complex features of the intellectual and cultural life of numerous countries over several hundred years. It has, for example, been described as the birth of the modern world out of the ashes of the Dark Ages, as the discovery of the world and the discovery of man, and as the era of untrammeled individualism in life, thought, religion, and art. Recently, some historians find that attributes similar to these were present in various people and places in the Middle Ages, and also that many elements long held to be medieval survived into the Renaissance, have denied that Renaissance ever existed. This skeptical opinion serves as a reminder that history is a continuous process and that periods are not given by history but invented by historians. Nonetheless, the division of the temporal continuum into named segment is an all but indispensable convenience in discussing history. Furthermore, during the span of time called the Renaissance, it is possible to identify a number of events and discoveries which began approximately in the 15th century, clearly affected radical and distinctive changes in the beliefs, productions, and manners of life in many people, especially in the upper and the intellectual classes. All this occurrence may be regarded as putting a strain on the relatively closed and stable world of a great civilization of the latter Middle Ages, when most of the essentials and permanent truths about God, man, the universe were considered to be adequately known. The full impact of many developments in the Renaissance did not make itself felt until the Enlightenment in the latter 17th and the 18th centuries, but the fact that they occurred in this period indicates the vitality, the audacity, and the restless curiosity of many men of the era, whether scholars, thinkers, artists, or adventurers. Prominent among these developments were: Point 1. The New Learning. Renaissance scholars of the classics called humanists revived the knowledge of the Greek language, discovered and disseminated a great number of Greek manuscripts, and added considerably to the number of Roman authors and work which had been known to the Middle Ages. The result was to open out the sense of the vastness of the historical past, as well as to enlarge immensely the stock of ideas, materials, literary forms, and style available to Renaissance writers. In the mid-15th century, the invention of printing on paper from movable type made books for the first time cheap and plentiful, and floods of publications, ancients and moderns, poured from the presses of Europe to satisfy the demands of the expanding population who had learned to read. The rapidly of the spread of ideas discoveries, and types of literature in the Renaissance was made possible by this new technology of printing. The humanistic revival sometimes resulted in pedantic scholarship, sterile imitations of ancient works and styles, and a rigidly authoritarian rhetoric and literary criticism. It also bred, however, the gracious and tolerant humanity of an Erasmus and the high concept of cultivated Renaissance aristocracy expressed in Baldassare Castiglione II Cartagione, published in 1528. This was the most admired and widely translated of the many Renaissance courtesy books, or books on the character, obligations, and training of the man of the court. It sets up the ideal of the completely rounded or universal man developed in all his faculties and skills, physical, intellectual, and artistic. He is especially trained to be a warrior and statesman, but is capable also an athlete, philosopher, artistic conventionalist, and man of society. The courtier relations to women and of woman to men are represented in accordance with the quasi-religious code of Platonic love, and his activities and productions are crowned by the grace of sprezzatura, the Italian term for what seems the casual ease with which someone has been schooled to meet the demands of very complex and exacting rules. Leonardo da Vinci in Italy and Sir Philip Sidney in England are often represented as embodying the many aspects of the courtly ideals. Point 2. The New Religion. The Reformation led by Martin Luther was a successful heresy which struck at the very foundations of the institutionalism of the Roman Catholic Church. This early Protestantism was grounded on each individual's inner experience of spiritual struggle and salvation. Faith, based on the word of the Bible, was alone thought competent to save, and salvation itself was regarded as a direct transaction with God in the theater of the individual soul, without the necessity of intermediation of church priest or sacrament. For this reason, Protestantism is sometimes said to have been an extreme manifestation of Renaissance individualism in Northern Europe. It soon, however, developed its own type of institutionalism in the theocracy proposed by John Calvin and his Puritan followers. England, in characteristic fashion, muddled its way into Protestantism under Henry VIII and Elizabeth I, emphatically finding a middle way that minimized violence and hastened a stable new settlement. Point 3. The New World. In 1942, Christopher Columbus, acting on the persisting and widespread belief in the old Greek idea that the world is a globe, sailed west to find a new commercial route to the east, only to be frustrated by the unexpected barrier of a new continent. The succeeding explorations of this continent and its native population and its settlement by Europeans gave new materials to the literary imagination. The magic world of Shakespeare's The Tempest, for example, as well as the treatment of its native inhabitants by Prospero and others, is based on the contemporary account of a shipwreck on Bermuda and other writings about voyages to the New World. More important for English literature, however, was the fact that economic exploitation of the New World, often cruel and devastating to the native peoples, put England at the center rather than as heretofore at the edge of the chief trade routes, and so helped establish the commercial prosperity that in England, as in Italy earlier, was a necessary was a necessary, though not sufficient, condition for the development of a vigorous intellectual and artistic life. Point 4. The New Cosmos. The cosmos of medieval astronomy and theology was Ptolemaic, that is based on the astronomy of Ptolemy 2nd century, and pictured a stationary earth around which rotated the successive spheres. In 1543, Copernicus published his new hypothesis concerning the system of the universe. This gave a much simpler and more coherent explanation of accumulating observations of the actual movements of the heavenly bodies, which had led to ever greater complications of the Ptolemaic world picture. The Copernican theory proposed a system in which the center is the sun, not the earth, and in which the earth is not stationary but only one planet among many planets, all of which revolves around the sun. Investigations have not borne out the earlier assumption by historians that the world picture of Copernicus and his followers delivered an immediate and profound shock to the theological and secular beliefs of thinking men. For example, in 1611, when Donne wrote in the first anniversary that new philosophy calls all in doubt, for the sun is lost and the earth, he did so only to support the ancient theme or literary tropes of the world's decay and to enforce a standard Christian contemptus mundi. Still later, Milton in Paradise Lost expressed a suspension of judgment between the Ptolemaic and Copernican theories he adopted. However, the older Ptolemaic scheme as the comic setting for his poem because it was more familiar tradition and better adapted to his narrative purposes. Much more important in the long run was the effect of man's opinions of the general principles and methods of the new science developed by the great successors of Copernicus in the late 16th and the early 17th century, such as the physicist Johannes Kepler and Galileo and the English physician and psychologist William Harvey. Even after Copernicus, the cosmos of many writers in the Elizabethan era reminded not only Ptolemaic, it reminded also an animate cosmos that was invested with occult powers of inhabited by demons and spirits, and was widely believed to control men's lives and subtle influences, and to be itself subject to control by the power of witchcraft and of magic. The cosmos that emerged in the course of 17th century as a product of the scientific procedure of constructing hypotheses capable of being tested by precisely measured sense observation was the physical cosmos of René Descartes. Give me extension and motion, Descartes wrote, and I will construct the universe. This universe of Descartes and the new science consisted of extant particles of matter which moves in sphere according to fixed mathematical law, free from interference by angels, demons, human prayers, or occult magical power. His universe was, however, subject to the limited manipulations of experimental scientists who set out in this way to discover the law of nature and who, in Francis Bacon's phrase, had learned to obey nature in order to be her master. In Descartes and other thinkers, the working hypotheses of the scientists about the physical world were converted into a philosophical worldview, which was made current by popular expositions, and together with the methodological principle that controlled observation is the criterion of truth in many areas of knowledge, helped to constitute the climate of 18th century opinion known as the Enlightenment. So friend, this is my notes on the Renaissance and the Reformation. If you like this video, please like, share, comment and subscribe, and please don't forget to press the bell icon for new video notification. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.